Mongoose Jake here with a internals and mod guide or mod potential video. Just like I've done with the previous two blasters, the new equalizer and the Thundershot. This one is, of course, as you can see, on the TriggerFire, the new Adventure Force blaster coming up soon, released by Busby Toys under the Adventure Force line. And this one is the single-handed firing capable blaster that I think basically is a 100% better nail biter. Higher capacity, higher power, everything's better about it. Now, I've already had it apart looking at it, learning exactly how it works, and it's actually very, very simple. So we'll take a look at it here together. Starting off first, the actual mechanism, I'm going to remove the plunger tube, spring, and plunger rod so that I can show the mechanism here. Now with the shell apart, all the screws are on the left-hand side of the shell, and they all are all the same size. No special screws anywhere, so easy to keep track of. Just keep a dish like I do. I keep these little, they're actually like stationary baskets, but keep track of them all. But there are no special placements, no special lengths, all are the exact same size. Busby is ingenious. This is the ultra simple internals to provide the single hand firing. Now this piece has a mate on the bottom. All they are is covers to allow it to not have exposed gaps. You don't need it. If you don't want it, you can remove it. I'd keep it though, but when you pull back, as you can see here, it indexes the drum. Now specifically on the drum, I had a question posed to me through a direct message on Facebook. Is the drum compatible with the Sidewinder drum? Because at first glance, they look very similar. Here's the most recent release of the Sidewinder. You know, at first glance, it looks similar. But there is a couple of things missing. One, if you look at the trigger shots, or TriggerFire drum, it's missing the outer ring. And this outer ring here, these notches are what indexes the drum for the Sidewinder. Without that, this drum won't fit in the Sidewinder and index. Plus also, from front to back, the profile is a little larger on this one. It is actually about a 1/4 inch longer with this central protrusion there that is not present on the Sidewinder drum. This drum also won't work in the TriggerFire because it lacks these rear indexing points, which is how this drum advances on the TriggerFire. Unfortunately, I guess they weren't able to use the same indexing system. That would have been awesome if they were, because then, hey, everybody would have Sidewinder drums already present. But they didn't use the same one because the Sidewinder indexes through these notches on the front of the drum. The TriggerFire indexes through these notches on the back of the drum. So, could you design one to work for both? Yes. Yes, you could. You would just simply have to make the TriggerFire drum have this, if you were to 3D print it, and then you would have to make it a little thinner, and then include on the front notches for here on your design. So could it be done? Yes. Yes, you could. Because back to back, they're very similar, as you can see. So there is a way you could make it work, but that would require custom design, and the stock ones aren't compatible. So that put aside, that was a big question that I wanted to make sure I answered. But that put aside, let's get to how this thing actually works. So with it apart, and again, no solvent welding, just like there hasn't been on any of the new releases. When you pull the whole grip, it indexes the drum, as you can see here, and pulls back. This piece here catches the plunger rod, which has a hook on it, and then pulls it back, and there is a notch in the shell, as you can see. Then it releases the plunger rod right there. That is the release point, and then you have primed it back, and then it releases the plunger rod. Now I'll put the plunger tube and plunger rod in place without the spring, and I'm going to try to actuate this manually. As you can see, it does have a decent sized plunger tube, so there is some potential there. So we will try to index this manually. Let me zoom in first. Okay, now I'm going to try to manually do this. So it comes back, it's indexed the drum, you've almost fully primed the blaster, then it hits that point, releases the plunger rod, and it slams forward. Now, the only point that I see to an issue of full potential is the length of draw. As you can see here, it starts there. I'm going to use a full length dart for comparison purposes, and you can see yourself it releases before the full length of a dart. I'll do that again. So now here we are. There. You have roughly 1.25 inches of draw. Now, that's not bad. That's not bad considering what it is. And the fact that it has a plunger tube that is quite large. I mean, that is quite large. It's well bigger than a Retaliator plunger tube. I mean, not even close, to be honest. There is a bit of dead space. I'm going to back off my camera here. Okay, there is a bit of dead space there that needs filled to allow proper efficiency. There's very good airflow through the plunger tube, and I mean, barring that, there are no air restrictors either in the plunger tube or in the seal or in the drum. So there's no air restrictor to remove. So you're looking at basically improve the efficiency and increase the spring rate to the point where you can still prime it. And it does use a larger spring. I have a turf Retaliator spring here for comparisons. This is getting ready to go into a build, but this is a turf 8 kilogram. It's a turf 8 kilogram, so it's the same, roughly the same length. The stock TriggerFire spring is a little shorter, but it's quite a bit larger. The Retaliator springs do not fit over this plunger rod. This is a very chunky plunger rod. Here's an actual Retaliator spring, and that is a fit that will not slide. You know, they won't compress properly. So that is a no-go. So you could do strong arm springs, maybe cut down long shot springs, but definitely a strong arm. And I do believe a long shot spring will fit inside that plunger tube, no problem. And the catch is a pretty big plate on the shell, so I don't think that there's any issue there either. So I think you're going to use either cut down long shot springs or strong arm springs. There's more length there than a strong arm spring, so cut down long shot would probably be the best idea. So wealth of spring choices there. You just have to use something larger than a Retaliator spring. And again, good plunger tube volume already. I mean, that's a pretty good size one. That's larger than the plunger tubes on most of the mag-fed Busby blasters. So I think there is some serious potential there. And again, very easy to work with. I will definitely be getting a few of these for builds, even if it's just, you know, paint jobs and slight spring upgrades. The plunger rod, this component here, the sled, the priming sled, it's not really a priming bar, but the priming sled is also decently beefy, so I think you can handle a slight spring upgrade. Although I am going to comment, this spring is already good. So I don't have a spring strength gauge, but just by experience, this thing is gotta be at least a 6 or 7 kilogram rated spring. This is actually a stronger spring than what comes in the Busby MagFeds. Here's a Busby MagFed. Just look at the gauge and the diameter of the coil. I mean, this one, okay, it's a non-scientific method, but just doing the squeeze tests, this has quite a bit more initial resistance. So to draw this to a close, there is mod potential. It's easy to work with, no solvent welding. I think that you're going to have long shot springs, strong arm springs. They'll work in there. Some other various ones, like say springs that were made for the Alpha Hawk, and even maybe some rival springs would fit in this. You're going to get to the point where, remember, one hand grip prime. So that'll be your limiting factor. But the way this works is pretty simple. And everything seems to be designed well enough that it's got the strength there. But I'm going to draw this to a close. This is one I was really wanting to deal with. I actually did this before the Tetra shot because I was wanting to actually get to this one first. I know I was going to put them up in the upload order in the same way that I had done my unboxing and reviews of the blasters, but the Tetra shot will come at a later date because I'm going to go ahead and get to my modding on it. I'll share the internals before I mod it, but I've already got the itch to mod that one. But we'll get to that one at a later date. But for now, it's the TriggerFire. Of course, this is going to be a upcoming Adventure Force release by Busby Toys, and it is probably the best one-handed Springer that has been made. I mean, it doesn't have a whole lot of competition with the Nerf nail biter, but I think this is a better choice overall, and especially since you could just minimize it here and then turn it into a drum-fed pistol. But at the Smuggish Jake, saying thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope this is informative. It's meant to be kind of a community resource. So thank you for watching if you've stayed to the end.